Good morning. Good morning. This is Troy Black, and this is Filibusted Headlines. Today, we're going to be talking about the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, some of the things that have happened in the last 3 days with the escalation that's taking place, Putin's defiance of President Trump, along with him declaring war on tech giants. Also, we're going to be talking about the death of DEI here in the States, and then British journalist Tommy Robinson, and a little bit of King Charles and Charlie Kirk. So, on Sunday night, we saw a record for drone attacks on Ukraine, totaling 355 drone attacks. So this was basically the top tier when it comes to Russia's barrage on the Ukraine. And then just last night, we saw them continue with another 60 more drones that actually injured several people. So Ukrainian defenses have neutralized about 43 drones, while Russia destroyed 99 Ukrainian counterattack drones. So not too even there, unfortunately. Depending on which side, I say unfortunately, depends on which side you're on. We even, the crazy thing is, even on the conservative side here in the States, we have a huge split between people supporting Ukraine and Russia. And I know just admitting that out loud, I'm going to get a ton of comments on this video after the fact. So Russia has captured 4 villages and evacuated the citizens using the area as what they're calling a quote unquote buffer zone. This last week has proven to be catastrophic for Ukraine, with the sheer amount and velocity of drone attacks, crumbling buildings, destroying homes and other properties, injuring dozens, and ultimately killing at least 12 people. But since President Trump has called Putin crazy, we saw that happen yesterday after the 355 attacks, some diplomatic developments have been in play. The U.S. and Russia are currently in talks exchanging prisoners in an attempt to reach some kind of conclusion. We saw prisoner exchanges take place over the weekend. I think it was a series of 3 different days. And we saw hundreds of prisoners, both military and civilian, exchanged between these nations. But Putin has pushed back against Trump, saying that Trump is showing signs of emotional behavior. President Trump has also warned Russia against the attempt to overtake all of Ukraine. So this is a very specific warning for President Trump, and this is what he said. He said it would be the cause of Russia's downfall. So obviously, President Putin could take that as a threat. He could also take it as a philosophical conclusion that Trump has come to. But also, he did not hesitate to criticize Zelensky's attitude as well. So we've seen Trump criticize both sides. And I think it probably comes from Trump's efforts to create these peace talks between these nations, and both sides seemingly wanting to continue this war. So Zelensky claims that Russia is only letting up in order to prepare a new offensive. So obviously they went from 355 drone attacks to 60. That's definitely less, but at the same time, that does not mean that things are going to continue winding down. So Russian Foreign Minister spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that they are drafting a memorandum with conditions for a peace settlement. So that could potentially be good news. And she's actually quoted saying Russia continues to develop a draft memorandum on a future peace treaty, defining a number of positions, such as the principles of settlement, the timing of a possible peace agreement, and a potential ceasefire for a certain amount of time if appropriate agreements are reached. But here's what we've seen happen. Is that Putin has actually declared war on Western tech giants. So Russia has been strangled in a lot of ways over the last several years by Western nations who have essentially said, we're going to put sanctions on you. We're not going to do business with you. A lot of the entrepreneurs in this video where Putin addresses his cabinet, he talks about a lot of the Russian entrepreneurs essentially being thick-skulled and fighting through the struggle, even with all of the limitations that they've had over the last few years. But this is what he's declared. He recently declared war on Western tech giants, including Microsoft and Zoom. And then he also lumped McDonald's in there. And so I'm just going to say, from my perspective, I'm okay if Putin takes down Microsoft, Zoom, and McDonald's. We can all do without those, I believe. But you may have a love for one of those 3, hopefully not all 3 of them. But he's reported to have said strangle them. He essentially said, we are going to strangle them. He also has been reported to have said that when a lot of these nations come back, to Russia and say, hey, we want to work with you again. We want to remove the sanctions. We want to do business with you again. He said, we know what to do about that, don't we? Essentially, we're not going to play ball with y'all anymore. And we're going to get revenge for the last few years. So this is all part of his effort to push back against the sanctions, the business restrictions. And I believe he's taking a strong arm approach here, and it's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt his nation in the long run. Other topics today. This is very interesting. So Russia obviously has been on this crazy rampage over the last 3 days, last several nights against Ukraine. And now Ukraine is actually in a strangely strategic position to fight back more than ever before. This headline, Germany's MERS, no more range limits for weapons to Ukraine. So the range limits on weapons to Ukraine have already been taken off by France, the UK, and the USA. So all of these nations have been supplying weapons or supplies to Ukraine over the last several years. Germany has also been highly supportive of Ukraine, but they've also had some very strong restrictions on the range of weapons that they will supply and also the range of weapons that they're allowing Ukraine to use. In their own words, saying that they're allowing them to use. And now obviously Ukraine has a responsibility to do with the weapons, whatever the country supplying those weapons has allowed them to do. But the Kremlin has responded to this because saying that it is a very dangerous move, because what Germany has essentially done now under the leadership of MERS is that they have said, hey, we're removing the restrictions, and Germany is known for its Taurus missiles, which I believe have a range of about 500 kilometers. And so this could allow Ukraine to attack central targets. It could allow Ukraine to even attack targets like the Kremlin. If it wanted to do that, it could allow Ukraine to attack the airstrips, even the Russia's missile launchers, things like that. And so they could have a lot more damage dealt if they were allowed to use these missiles and if they were supplied these missiles. Now, Germany has not said that they're going to supply the Taurus missile specifically, but they've also recently said with this news, we're going to stop letting people know, we're going to stop disclosing which weapons we're sending. So kind of seems like they're sending Taurus missiles and they just don't want the world to know about it. Yet Russia has responded to this threat, saying any direct attack on their transport infrastructure by a German missile, especially a Taurus missile, they said they are going to take as Germany getting directly involved in the war. So is that an empty threat? We'll have to wait and see. We've already seen Russia kind of have some empty threats here when they threatened to declare war on NATO and on the Western nations if they allowed these long-range missiles to be used by Ukraine, and that was allowed by several nations already. And we haven't seen nuclear war. We haven't seen them push back and follow through with some of the threats that they've made. So we'll have to wait and see what takes place next. In other news, DEI is on its way out. Praise God. Corporate America's retreat from DEI has eliminated thousands of jobs. NPR posted a ridiculous, it's just, you can go read it for yourself, a ridiculous article this morning, May 27th. So though I do care that people get treated fairly in the workplace, though I do care that marginalized groups get treated fairly and they get the same opportunities that the non-marginalized groups get here in the States. And I believe that that's part of having a good society, part of having a good, healthy work environment. At the same time, what we've traditionally seen from the DEI corporate groups is we've seen that they're not just trying to treat people fairly, but rather they're trying to use it as a form of attack on the people that they don't want to see get these jobs. And unfortunately, it's not been a good look for the American corporate job world. So corporate America's retreat from DEI has eliminated thousands of jobs, they say. When you actually dive into this, it's not that many jobs. I think it's like 20,000 or something like that. And here, if you can think about this, if you looked at a corporation as like a marathon runner team, and you've got all these people, like running this race together, and then you throw other people on top of their backs and say, okay, now carry these people. It's like, that's what DEI essentially is doing to corporations. It's not helping them grow. It's not helping to create new jobs. It's actually slowing us down as a country, slowing down the corporations. Now, at the same time, do I believe that we should give people equal opportunity? 100%. But that is not something that, as we've seen, you can force upon people, but instead that has to go all the way back to the sin, the root of the problem, which is the sin nature. Has to go all the way back to, hey, are we choosing people for this company? Are we choosing executives? Are we hiring people that are also going to have a love for their for other humans, that are also going to have give people equal opportunity, that are also not going to be coming at this with a prejudice, that are not going to be coming at this, with discriminatory practices. And it has more to do with fostering a healthy work environment and the right team than it does with putting restrictions on people and essentially handcuffing people. Because what we're seeing is DEI traditionally has not just tried to create, they're not necessarily trying to create a equal opportunity. They're literally trying to choose who gets the opportunity. And that's the opposite of freedom. It's the opposite of what America stands for. So they tell the sad story about how one person lost their job. And the truth is, people lose their jobs all day long. Every day there's people losing jobs, and you can always go get a new job. You can get a new career. You can find a new way to use the skills that God has given you, and be a benefit to society. This is what the article says. The anti-DEI political climate, this woman named Birdsong Williams refers to, has been slowly bubbling up for years, even before President Trump was reelected, and set things to a hard boil by immediately signing executive orders banning what he calls illegal DEI. So they are in some ways blaming this on President Trump, but also the truth is they're admitting that the culture was already waking up to the reality of how bad DEI is for our nation, for our people, and not just for people in one class or one race or something like that, but people across the board. So Verizon has just announced also that it is cutting back much of its DEI policies in order to comply with the Federal Communications Commission, as it expects to come into this $20 billion merger. So before they can make this merger happen, they're having to cut back and choosing to cut back a lot of their DEI programs, which I believe is going to be good for that company. I mean, just look at some of the things we've seen, like with some of the marketing approaches that the DEI heavy companies have taken over the last couple of years, and some of the pushback against that. So this is what they say. They're trying to create workplaces that are more welcoming for all employees and more attractive to a broader pool of qualified candidates. I'll go along with that. Yet at the same time, that's not what we've seen from DEI traditionally. That would be great if that was what they were actually doing, but really we've seen the opposite. We've seen them essentially put laws and rules and restrictions on who can be hired and how many people can be hired and that kind of stuff. It's the opposite of freedom. It's not what we want here in the States. So what is the solution? I honestly believe the solution at the end of the day is Jesus. It's people having the love of God in their hearts and looking at other people through that lens, through that love. One time I worked at, and I know that I'm obviously a white male, and so I do not have any of the experience that an African American or a Black American has had, or a woman has had, for example. So there are a lot of things that I don't know, and that I'm not going to try to pretend to know. And I have not had those experiences, and I would have to divert to somebody else to share that experience. But one experience I have had was I worked at a company that was 90% African American. And so there was a very small minority in that company of other people, Caucasian like myself, Indians, and a few other minorities there. And so it was 90% African American. And that was one of the best work environments I've ever been in my life. It was one of the best work experiences I've ever had. And the reason was because of the people. The people were fantastic, and they had a love for fellow human beings. They had a love for one another. No matter if you were the same, no matter if you're different, it was just such a great experience, and I'll never forget that. And it has definitely helped to formulate in my mind what a positive, healthy work environment looks like. And so I'm going to be praying for more of that moving forward in this nation. Other news: Tommy Robinson has been released after 7 months in jail. So he's a controversial British journalist, and he was imprisoned for a myriad of things, but ultimately contempt of court. And now he's being released from prison. So he was actually infamous for his anti-Muslim rhetoric and aggressive journalistic methods. and his release is coming 4 months early. And they have reported that it is due to a change in attitude, according to a judge overseeing the case. So he's already planning to hold a freedom of speech rally later this year. And upon his exit from prison, he also thanked Elon Musk. And what he had to say was, without X, if we didn't have X, everyone would just think I lied. No one would have gotten any other narrative. Musk has also proclaimed support of Robinson in the past, saying the man was imprisoned for telling the truth. So this is something we are seeing more and more in the UK. And I'm not standing up for Tommy Robinson because I personally don't know anything about him, don't know his story, don't know even what's taking place there. I've not been following that story. But in the UK, they have lost freedom of speech, unfortunately. They've lost the right to freedom of speech. And although the leaders and the government will say we still have freedom of speech here, they're lying straight through their teeth. And we're going to see an example of that in a second. And this story actually has to do with it. This is Canada today. King Charles is in Canada today, and he is speaking. He's essentially addressing the fact that they have a new prime minister, and technically Canada is, for those of y'all who don't know, a constitutional monarchy. So technically, in some sense, King Charles is still the head of state for both Canada and the UK, although practically speaking, he's kind of more of just a figurehead, and the prime minister of Canada is the one that really makes the decisions and gets things done. So this is not a normal visit, some have said, and it has a lot to do with Donald Trump. Obviously, we saw Trump push back against Canada, even have an influence on their recent elections. If y'all want to watch that video, it's a very controversial video we put out a couple weeks back about how Trump actually, some of the statements he made, I believe, and we as a team believe, and there's evidence to the fact, and there's a lot of other people that believe the same thing, that he actually directly affected the election and swung the election towards the liberal side. So if that sounds shocking to you, I would say go watch that video, and you can find out some of our opinions on why we think that happened, why he did what he did, and what's really going on. So that video is here on Filibusted. But King Charles is speaking in Canada today, and many people have said they think this is a direct response to the Canada-Trump debacle that's been taking place. And this is essentially Canada saying, hey, we take pride in the fact that we are a constitutional monarchy. Here's our real head of state over here, King Charles. We're going to bring him in, let him address the nation today. And typically, they'll have a representative there addressing the nation in place of the king. But obviously, this time, they're bringing the king in himself. So a political science professor at the University of Alberta says the royal visit could be an indication that the king takes Canada's sovereignty seriously. So this is going to be interesting. We're going to have to see what happens between the UK and Canada in the days ahead. There could be more to come, or this could be it. As a response to the whole, Trump saying, y'all just vote me into power in Canada, or like, let's make Canada part of the United States. The University of Toronto political science professor said the visit is a reminder that we are an independent country and a rallying together of Canadians. Hey, I don't want to make fun of Canadians today. I know we have a lot of Canadians watching this channel, and I thank you for your support and for being here and for tuning in. But at the same time, don't let, I'm speaking to Canada, don't let the words of one man shake you up that much. You're Canadian. And God has a plan for you. God has a purpose for not just you as an individual, but your nation. And one person's rhetoric cannot throw that off track and should not throw that off track. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But Charles is the head of the state for both Canada and the UK. And the UK is actually seeking a stronger trade relationship with the Trump administration right now. So we've got Canada and the Trump administration going head to head. We've got the Trump administration in the UK joining forces and trying to come to a better trade deal. So King Charles and Canada uniting again in some ways could actually help to heal some of these wounds in the long run, especially if the United States and the UK begin to work more closely together. So Canada's constitutional monarchy is seen as a point of pride and distinction between Canada and the US. This article is quoted with saying, why is that though? And here's the crazy thing about it is, hey, I love the UK. I love England. I would love to visit someday. Maybe not now so much as I used to want to, but we just saw Charlie Kirk get back from the UK, and this is the video he posted. The UK has fallen. I saw it myself. Although there are some things to laugh about here, it's really not a laughing matter, because he said that in the UK, 30 people a day are being arrested for offensive social media posts. Think about that for a second. You could post something, just post your opinion online, and then the cops show up at your door, or the FBI, if you're here in the States or whatever, and you get arrested and thrown in prison. Charlie Kirk shared a story of a woman who is now serving 2.5 years in prison for a social media post that she later deleted and publicly apologized for. So there's no going back. It's like, oh, you posted it, you offended somebody, you're in prison for 2.5 years. This is the definition of insanity, and it's happening in the UK. Unfortunately, it's happening in this is not a place that you would expect this to take place, but that's the world that we live in. That's what's going on nowadays. And so, in my mind, Canada seeing itself as a constitutional monarchy and using that as a point of pride, it's not great. It's like, man, Canada's got its issues. The United States has its issues. The UK has its issues. But here's what I'm thankful for in the US. At least we have freedom of speech still, right? At least we have the freedom of speech, and we can say something, and obviously not make a threat against somebody. That's not right. But at the same time, we can share our opinion on something and not be afraid of going to jail, not be afraid of losing our rights. And they're quickly losing those rights in the UK. So we need to be in prayer for those in the UK. We need to be in prayer for those in Canada. But at the same time, we've got our own issues to deal with as well. And we don't have everything together, and we're still working towards that. And so I think if we all join together and maybe quit making fun of each other so much, instead decide to work together and to care about people across the pond or our neighbors to the north or the south or wherever, we're all going to be better off. So that's all I have for today. Went a little long. Hope you enjoyed this stream, and I'll see you next time.